Ever been curious about what mediumship development might look like over time for a practicing medium? Well, I'm back for part two of sharing with you my mediumship development journey with details of what clairs came to me when I was first starting versus what I'm using now for the first 18 months of my development. If you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe and hit the bell. That way you'll be notified each time that I release a new video about all things mediumship, including recordings of my readings so you can see me in action, spiritual how-tos, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. I'm picking up in March of 2023 in terms of my mediumship development. If you haven't seen part one, behind the scenes of how my mediumship developed, definitely check it out. March 2023 was actually a really challenging month for me. It was the first time that I became aware of the fact that mediums go through development cycles. Usually, how you'll notice you're going through a cycle is that things will start to feel a little bit fuzzy and the spiritual impressions you're receiving might not be quite as clear for a short period of time, usually 1 to 2 weeks. You may have had a slightly different experience, but that's how it happens for me. After I go through that period of 1 to 2 weeks, I feel as if I'm sharper, clearer, and able to do more in a reading than I was before. A great tutor from Arthur Finley gave me this analogy. When you're working as a medium, you're working in a certain sized room, let's imagine. Then you walk through a fuzzy hallway that takes a week or two to get through, where everything seems not quite as clear, but then it opens up into an even bigger room, and this is the room that you're operating from now. That analogy really helped me understand what I was going through when I hit that first slump in March of 2023. I remember one of the first readings I did after we got back from a trip to Palm Springs, where I was worrying and stewing over my March slump. I did a reading with this woman and I felt sharp as a tack. I was bringing through her father. I knew the exact age that he had passed at, all kinds of things about family dynamics. I saw him in a wheelchair, so I knew he had been in one. I knew that he had died tragically, passed before his time. And instantly I started feeling all kinds of things in my bones and my joints. And then I heard bone marrow cancer. And I said it just like that to her. He passed from bone marrow cancer. And she looked at me wide-eyed and said, 100%. It was a time where clairvoyance was still extremely strong for me, and clairaudience was also leading the way. Now, when I go through that cycle of mediumship where I feel spirit is helping me to develop and working on things and it's a little fuzzy, I don't stress at all because I think of it as, oh, I'm getting an upgrade soon. The quality of my readings, even when I go through a fuzzy period, is what my best readings used to be. So I try to stay calm about it and know that that time will lift shortly. I've shown some of these journals in my last video. So these journals actually document my first 135 readings that I gave. Here's a note that I wrote after giving a reading to our nanny. It says, don't interpret symbols literally. Kind of hard to read my handwriting, but this was a huge learning for me where I was seeing some things clairvoyantly, and instead of describing what I saw, I jumped straight to interpreting what the meaning was before I felt I knew the meaning myself. So that was a really, really good lesson to me. Something else that's in this journal is something called CERT, C-E-R-T. It's an amazing formula for a reading that I learned from Janet Nohavec and John Holland. C stands for communicator, identify them first. Evidence, give the evidence to let the sitter know the spirit's present. Returned, why did they return? So give the message. And T, tying up loose ends. Was there any evidence that came through that just wasn't clear? So these journals are chock full of all kinds of things that I learned, and that was really, really powerful. There are other readings in here too where I was getting so many names and always getting them clairaudiently. So at the beginning of my development, I would very clearly hear one name or variations of one name, and I knew what that felt like, and it was always clairaudiently that I received names. So that was really common for me in that first 6-month period as well. In April of 2023, I stopped documenting my readings. It took a lot of time for me to reflect on every reading, and I felt that I was getting to a place where there was more benefit to be working on other things in my business than be reviewing all the different readings. But It was such a powerful thing to do for those first 6 months of development. I also, at this point in time, was being reached out to by so many people that our family decided it was time to stop giving readings in the house. We didn't know who these people were anymore at this point, and it was time for me to start charging. So April of 23 is when I started working professionally. Now, some of you already know that beginning June 14th of 2023 is when I went through one of the hardest times of my life. I created a video called My Dark Night of the Soul. You can check it out if you want to hear more details about this. But from June until September, I struggled with crippling anxiety and horrible panic attacks. And it really brought home how much mediumship is about being able to be at a certain vibration to connect with a spirit. When you're in a state of constant terror or fear or panic, you cannot reach that same vibration. And so, although I had created so many skills and grown my abilities, I was very fuzzy during the summer. I could still give pretty darn good quality readings for most of the summer. I'll never forget August 29th and August 31st. This was still during my Dark Night of the Soul. And on the 29th, a Tuesday, and the 31st, a Thursday, I had to reschedule both of those readings because I couldn't get a connection. I couldn't receive things accurately. I was all over the place and humiliated. So I didn't mention what I was going through to my sitters, but I asked them, would you like a refund or would you like to reschedule in 6 months? They both said that they wanted to reschedule. So I put them on the calendar for 6 months later, hoping and praying that I would be mentally and emotionally in a better place. That time really plummeted my confidence, which additionally brought my vibration down. And luckily, I was already in the process of knowing exactly what I needed to do to get more help and support to survive during this time. Here is the silver lining. I learned so much during that dark night that in September of 2023, I moved through this state of panic, anxiety, and fear, and I started to feel like myself again. And the best news ever is that when I went back to give readings, I was sharper than ever. I had taken all of October off to take care of my mental and emotional health and to spend time with my family and just slow down. And when I came back in September, my readings were the best they had ever been. I also joined back up with a development circle that I had joined pretty much right away when I started receiving spiritual impressions. And that was a time where I really started seeing new things cropping up in my practice. I whizzed through so many of my readings with lots of accurate information. And the biggest change that I noticed was that it was coming more quickly than ever before. So it was really starting to go in a flow. Not only did I feel like I was getting very accurate, very clear spiritual impressions, but this is the first time that I started to realize my information was coming in what felt like more of a flow state, just pouring out versus hearing, seeing, and quickly one after another. It was even faster. I knew for certain that this was coming straight through me with absolutely no time to think. Now, of course, you don't think when you're channeling anyway, but I would be processing what I was seeing and hearing, and I realized that that didn't seem to be happening as obviously any longer. From October to December in 2023, I had another big advance happen in my practice that came about in my development circle. Now, I love development circles because they are the perfect playground to learn. And in fact, if you want to watch my video, Development Circles, What Are They? Or How to Find a Good Development Circle, definitely check out those videos. And you can even go to mediumshipwithmel.com/learn to learn about my development circle. Now, during this time, my clairsentience really started to dominate and take off. I realized that I was getting such detail about the personality and the character, not just of the spirit who had passed, but of other past spirits they were with, or family members and sitters who were still living. I started to understand so many things about family dynamics, the conversations that had been had, the arguments, the celebrations, the events, things that needed to be said, apologies, gratitudes, acknowledgments, and thanks. By 2024, I was so hungry to continue to develop because I realized my development was coming so quickly that if I could understand a few different styles of teaching at the same time, I knew it would take me a long way. So in 2024, this is when I was in 3 different development circles at once, constantly soaking up information from other teachers. I started to notice some really big changes right at the beginning of January in 2024. I'd taken a class a year prior that discussed how to interview a spirit. So asking the spirit questions in your mind while you're getting a reading, then getting those answers back and relaying them. But the biggest change I noticed in 2024 was that I had 0 time to ask a spirit questions. These things had been coming about the end of 2023, as I mentioned, but spirits would bring through information so fast that it was almost heading toward pure claircognizance. I had no time to ask a question, and spirits wanted to get straight to the point about who they had been while they were here, who their sitter was now, what was going on in their sitter's lives, the things that needed to be cleared up since their passing, the things that had happened since their passing, what their passing was like, and the acknowledgments or forgiveness they needed to ask for, or apologies they needed to make, or gratitudes or acknowledgments they needed to share. But they wanted to get straight to the point. And so much of my reading started to become a long, big message that was filled with the evidence as I went. This started to make a lot of sense to me. If you think about what it must be like to become a spirit and come back to talk to a loved one, how boring might it be to say, I was 33, I died from this, I love to eat this kind of food, instead of saying to them, hey, I really want to talk about that important thing we never got to say before I left. So this shift seemed very normal and natural to me, but extremely obvious that things had changed. And I really stopped seeing clairvoyantly very much any longer. Of course, I get clairvoyant images often, but the majority of my readings in 2024 are almost entirely clairsentient. So lots and lots of feelings, sometimes textures, but all aspects of clairsentience, very much deepening, allowing me to know very quickly who I'm with, what role they played. Is it a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a daughter? And then claircognizant, bringing through that message while I'm feeling completely claircognizantly. So I can tell you right now that my dominant clairs at this time are claircognizance and clairsentience, with lots of clairaudience, lots of clairvoyance sprinkled in, and sometimes clairgustance or clairalience, so smelling and tasting sprinkled in as well. I love that I still get to use all of the clairs, and I also love that it flows out of me in the majority of my readings. Now, that's not all the time. Remember that every medium has readings that are a lot harder and like pulling teeth. This could be something to do with the spirit, because perhaps the spirit communicates in a way that is harder for me to read. It could be that the sitter is not as easy to read for. Maybe they have an energy that is of a low vibration. Now, I tend to never blame the quality of my readings on a sitter, but I will say that there's different factors between these 3 different spirits, spirit of the reader and spirit of the sitter, that can make the reading a lot harder. And you will always have readings that are like pulling teeth, or all of a sudden you've been flying high for months and you get one that's a total bummer. That's normal. One of the things I've realized in my mediumship as well is that my confidence is to a level where it's not as difficult for me, when I'm not quite sure what a spirit is communicating, to slow down and say, is that what you're showing me? Show me that again. And often when I'm asking them to repeat something, I'm using clairvoyance. I'm asking them to show me something another time, like, are you living or past? Is this someone you want me to talk about, or is this actually you who is past, for example? I think that control over my craft, as well as that confidence, is what allows me to slow down an interview when needed. But most of the times in my reading, let my claircognizance and my clairsentience dominate, sprinkling in the other clairs when needed. What clairs did you use when you began as a medium? And what clairs do you use now? I'd love to hear from you. Comment below. In the meantime, if you'd like to strengthen your clairs so you can speak to spirit, go ahead and download my free guide. It's just below. It's called 3 Easy Exercises to Strengthen Your Clairs and Speak to Spirit. You can also check out my free training. It's called 3 Essential Practices to Strengthen Your Skills as a Medium. Go ahead and check out mediumshipwithmel.com if you'd like to book a private reading with me, a group reading, or a spiritual assessment. And if you'd like to learn right along with me, you can check out my development group. Don't forget to check out this video next. If you like this video, definitely subscribe. Hit that bell if you'd like to be notified the next time I release a video about all things mediumship.